sections?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we're going to start by introducing ourselves.
I'm Renee. I don't know, I haven't met many of you, but
Yeah. And I'm Anna, and I've met 2 of you, 3 of you. You can go ahead.
My name's Ariana.
Mary.
Silvana.
Lori.
Caesar.
Yelida.
Jaime.
Josadara. Josada. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jason.
And then also, I wanted to ask, does everybody here already do parent consultation? Or are you guys starting? Okay. Okay, so this will be good.
And then at any point, stop us, ask questions. If you guys are doing things differently, ask us, let us know, we can talk about it. So it can be very interactive and we can discuss it.
Okay, so this is just kind of an overview of some of the things that we're going to go through. So again, if you feel like we're going too fast, just let us know, we'll slow down. Okay, so what is parent consultation and who is involved? Parent consultation is defined as a structured, indirect, collaborative, problem-solving relationship between the consultant and one or more parent consultees. That's just kind of the textbook definition of it. So it's an indirect form of service in which we're addressing the child's needs by working with the parent. So we call it parent consultation, but then also keep in mind that sometimes you will be working at schools or church groups or anything like that. So if parents are okay with using their hours so that you can provide consultation to staff at a school and give them support, that's okay too. Okay. Consultation is not counseling, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but who's involved? The consultant, you guys. The consultee, again, it can be a parent, a caregiver, family member, anybody who's really involved with the child, and then the client himself or herself.
So why is it important? So areas in which parent consultation has proven to be effective include aggression, social skills, noncompliance, social withdrawal, homework completion, school phobias, language skills, and then there's various other things that we kind of go through with them. It's really going to be case-to-case specific with them on what their concerns are. Interview stages, so you kind of want to figure out what are the problems. So asking them, what are some of your concerns? What are the things that you're needing that extra support with? Problem analysis, looking at what the problem is specifically, getting baseline for what is going on and identifying specifically what it is. Treatment implementation, and then treatment evaluation. So after figuring out what those problems are and some of those concerns, you can kind of come up with a plan. And then we always monitor and follow up with data.
So now we'll go over the roles and responsibilities of parent consultants. So this will be really important for those of you who haven't done it yet, and even for the ones who already have been doing PC with families. So we conduct ABA interventions as outlined by the clinical team with the parents or caregivers. You work on implementing goals. You ensure generalized skills across people and settings. So this, again, you do PC at the home, and a lot of families have a difficult time during community outings with haircuts, things like that. Train parents, caregivers on ABA techniques, and with this you want to make sure that you're working on teaching the parents the same strategies or similar strategies that are already being implemented during their direct one-on-one sessions. You discuss, model, implement, and provide parents or caregivers with feedback on interventions. You always, always, always want to model for parents, because a lot of the times you can go and talk to somebody about a strategy that doesn't do them any good. That'll give them basic knowledge about it. Unless you model and teach them how it should look, they're not really going to implement it correctly, and it's not going to be as effective. You collaborate with team members. So in the past, we've heard a lot of PCs don't ever reach out to the supervisors on the case, or they don't talk to the one-on-ones. And you want to make sure that you are communicating with the entire team so that everybody's on the same page, everybody knows exactly what's going on, and everybody knows, okay, parents are having a difficult time with this, or parents are working on this. So during my one-on-one, I want to make sure that parents participate 25% of the time so that they can continue working on those skills that are being targeted during PC. You take data throughout session. We'll talk about this a lot more later in the PowerPoint, but as PCs, you always have to track data, and always, always, always. You create and implement needed materials and supplies for programs. So if the parents say, hey, I really want to use the token economy outside of session because it's really working with my child when the one-on-one is here, then you'd be responsible for creating those materials. And you're responsible for documentation of parent-caregiver goal progress. So again, tracking data, taking those notes at the end of your sessions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For creating materials during PC, so would you take it out of your PC and input it to shift planning as program management? Or
Any
How would that
program management needs to get approved.
approved?
Yeah.
So if you do have some of that stuff to make, you do need to get approval from Heather. But some of the stuff, like I've had some of my PCs take the stuff with them to their PC session and create it with the parents. So have them be a part of it. If they're like, I want to make a token system, great. So in PC, let's look up, let me show you how to make a token system. So you guys can show them how to find the images or figuring out, make a token board that your kid's going to be motivated by. So what things does he like? So you can make some of those things in the session with them, and then it's build the PC in the home.
I do that. I'll bring Velcro to the session and say here, let's make this together.
Yeah.
I usually ask the parents if they want me to do it at home. It might take this long, and I have to take it from your monthly hours. So I ask them if they say that's fine, then I do it at home and then bring it in for next session.
Yeah. Even with that, just run it through Heather just to get that approval from her, because the hours that we have are the direct face-to-face hours. So you can just let her know, confirmed with family, they approve, just want to get her approval as well, so she knows as well.
So if you do go out for like a community outing, you have to sign a paper with PC, or because I know for direct one-on-one, if you're going to be out in the community, you have to sign a paper.
Like a liability waiver, you mean? Yeah, I think during the new hire training they provide those documents for you, but if not, we can send those out.
And anything that you guys have any questions on, always reach out to your case supervisor. Let's ask them, hey, mom's wanting to do this, because they might have already had those conversations, or they might have discussed it with the family. So then your case supervisor will let you know, yes, go ahead and do this, or I've talked to mom and we're not going to do that yet. So always and that's why that collaboration between the PC and the supervisor is so important, because sometimes parents will ask us things, and so, I've already talked to the supervisor about this or that, and this is how we're going to implement it. So we're on the same page, we're implementing the same program, same behavior plans, and then it just makes it more cohesive for the team.
Okay, accounting for cultural differences. So this PC, we wanted to definitely talk about cultural differences since you guys are all here because you are bilinguals and you are placed on cases with Spanish-speaking families, right? So you always want to consider that you might be working with families whom you do not share cultural dynamics with. So even for families that you work with who are Latinos, it's very different. Mexican families are different than Peruvian families, different from Argentinian families, different from Salvadorian families. It's completely different across the board, right? So you always want to take certain things into account. So this is going to be important when implementing goals with the family you're working with. So I kind of put just this little thing up here, keeping in mind sharing. So when you are trying to engage parents in conversation for the first time or ongoing sessions, you sit squarely, have an open posture, you acknowledge what they're saying, you relax, and you engage using eye communication. So differences and disabilities are perceived in an array across cultures. So in some cultures, social interdependence and an individual's role within the family are highly valued, while independence and autonomy are valued less than in Western cultures. So you'll come across families that will not exactly agree with all of our strategies, right? You'll come across families that want to try alternative medicines, and I've come across this a lot. I work with a lot of Latino families, and this happens all the time. So you always respect their decision. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I've come out to sessions before, and I observe things. I'm like, oh, okay, that's different. I don't say anything about it. If my opinion is asked, I don't give my opinion. I just say, okay. If they ask me something, I always just go back to research-based things. I don't want them to think that I agree with them or disagree with them. You want to maintain yourself as neutral as possible, because you want to remember there are those boundaries, right? And if it's an ongoing thing and the family says, hey, I want to try this new thing I heard about on the radio or TV, and they're constantly asking you about it, go back to the supervisor, hey, I don't feel comfortable addressing this with family anymore. But again, try to maintain as neutral as possible. Add anything to that?
All right, so resistant parents. So we always come across families who are resistant to some of the things that we are trying to implement or some of the feedback that we're giving them. So just kind of remembering that it is difficult for them. We're coming into their home. We're sometimes, at the end of the day, they're like coming home from work, and now we're stepping in and we're saying, do this, or that. They're tired. They have to make dinner. So kind of be mindful of that, that we are stepping into their home, work with what they're doing. So kind of make it functional to their afternoon routine. And it's difficult. It's difficult to trust a stranger. It's difficult to some of them to accept the diagnosis. Sometimes we're walking in, and I've had families who said, oh, I just got the diagnosis 3 months ago. They're still going through that process of understanding, one, what does it mean? What does the future hold? What's going to happen for my child? So being really aware of some of those things. Now, we're not there to sit and have a counseling session like Anna was saying, but be aware and kind of sympathetic to some of that. And it's difficult to ask for help. As a parent, you don't want to say, I don't know what to do with my kid. But that's why we're there. We're there to help and provide that support. But it's difficult for a parent to say, I don't know, and to turn to you. So kind of being mindful of some of those things as we're walking in. Look at their body language. Look at their facial expressions. And if you're noticing that it's too much, fade out a little bit. Ask more questions before just jumping in and saying, this is what you're doing wrong, or do this, or that. So approach it in a way that is going to help them. Don't judge, be compassionate. So there's a lot of things that people are going through personally and things like that. So we can't always say they're doing this wrong or that's not the way I would do it. But explain to them, go back to the research and explain why you would do it differently. And then the same, jump in, model for them so they can observe you, and then you can provide that feedback. Take into consideration environmental variables. Explain to parents why it's so important for them to be a part of session and for them to participate. And then begin working on a teaching strategy that will reflect success. If the family see the positive outcome from it, they're going to be more likely to want to participate. If they start to see a difference and things start to change positively, they're going to want to participate. They're going to want to observe, and then you're also building that relationship with them. They're going to trust you more.
And then I'm going to add to this also that when you're working with resistant parents, a lot of the times I've seen PCs will kind of take a different approach and try to become counselors to get parents to kind of like them, like, oh yes, tell me your problems, because you are always there. So again, a few slides back, we put that in. Consultation is not counseling. So we want parents to have a good relationship with the PCs and with the team, but you want to always consider those boundaries and respect those boundaries. So if parents do start to kind of vent and tell you stuff, always redirect it back to the client.
You can provide them with resources if needed, but we can't be there to talk about their marriage or mom's relationship with her mom. That's not why we're there. So how does that affect your child? Or how does Johnny react when this or that is happening? So relate it back to the child, and if the parent is persistent on sharing that stuff with you, go back to the supervisor and let them know. Most of my PCs are ending up more counseling. They need that support, and then the supervisor can step in and give them any of those resources if needed.
Setting up for success. So you want to identify the needs of the child and the family, and you'll do this conducting interviews and direct observations. So interviews, you want to ask the parents, where are you struggling? What does your child need? What do you need? And then go out and observe a session when the one-on-one is out there, just so you kind of have an idea of what the child does need. Because a lot of the times parents will give too little information or not enough information, right? Or it'll go beyond the truth sometimes. So you want to make sure that you are completely neutral and going out there and observing yourself. So you identify the areas of the strength. What is the family already doing? What can the child already do? Maybe family is already implementing something that's working and it's positive, so you want to definitely focus on those things. You prioritize the family's desires by interviewing them. So you always want to ask the family what they want their child to be able to do. So this is again where it goes back to a cultural thing, because you'll notice that when you start working with families of different cultures, there are families that are more focused on their child being able to read and have all these academic abilities, where there are other families that are like, I just want my child to be independent. I want them to learn how to bathe. I want them to dress. I want them to go and live as independently as possible. So that's where the culture thing is different, right? So keep that into account, take that into account. And then you identify the goals. So you start by looking at the FBA in the parent education section, and you create new and or more appropriate goals. So a lot of the times for FBAs, there's a limited amount of observations that are done. So sometimes the goals are not going to be reflective of what the parent truly needs. So you definitely want to have those observations and go out and say, you know, this goal is way too advanced for the family, or they can already definitely do this. I'm going to introduce something else. And of course, you always want to talk to the supervisor first. Say, hey, these are the goals on the FBA. I'm thinking they're not appropriate for these reasons. This is what the family's already doing, or they can't do this yet. And then you guys could further discuss that and what changes need to be made. So you discuss what the family has already tried. I talked about that. And then you create a plan. So you always want to create a plan that is definitely going to be carried out by the family. Again, keep in mind you're going out to a lot of families that just received a diagnosis. So they're still in that coping, right, stage. So you want to create something that's really simple for them to follow, especially if it's the very first time they've ever received services. You don't want to add additional stress or overwhelm them when they're already going through a difficult time.
Looking at some of their needs. So sit with a parent and ask them questions. What are areas of strengths? What are areas of needs? Where are the difficulties during your day? What are you struggling with to get your child to complete? And then observe the child and the parent together. How do they play together? How do they interact together just through their daily routines throughout the day? Getting dressed, eating breakfast, lunch, things like that. What are the areas that they're having the most difficulty with? It's a great time for you to build rapport with the family, and that's very important. Just like we do with our one-on-one sessions, we want to build rapport with our clients. Same thing with PC and the families. You want them to trust you, to go to you with their questions and anything that they need. Gather information about daily routines. So what is the child struggling with? Are they able to get dressed, brush their teeth, wash their hands, tie their shoes, things like that. So find out where the needs are. Concerns, needs, and priorities regarding the child, and then child behaviors that impact family functioning. So are they able to go out in the community? Are they able to go to birthday parties? Where specifically are behaviors occurring that they're having difficulty going out as a family unit? And then looking at the parent-child interactions.
For strengths. So you want to look at the strengths of the child and the family. Again, is the family new to ABA? If they are, they're probably not going to have very many strategies in their repertoire. If they've been in ABA for a while, they might already have some things that they're using that the child's responding to. So you want to ask those questions and make sure that you're aware. And you want to consider communication. So can the child communicate? Is the family providing those opportunities for the child to communicate? Social skills. Do they have play dates? Does a family expose the child to other children to develop those social skills? Is that something you need to also target? Self-help skills. Is the family struggling with dressing, with the bathing routine, with potty training, washing hands, any of those things, brushing teeth? Self-direction. Does the child play appropriately? Can they self-direct? Can they entertain themselves? Motor development, gross and fine motor. So these are all things that, again, you can gather more information through interview, but really unless you go and observe directly, that's when you're truly going to get information.
Sometimes families don't even realize, it just becomes habit, and that's kind of how their child plays. So sometimes you'll say, how does your child play with their toys? Oh, they do well. And then you observe and you're like, oh, does he always look down when he's playing with the trains? Does he always flip them over? And they're like, oh, they don't even realize that they're doing that sometimes. Like, I didn't realize that. That's how he plays with cars. So that observation piece is crucial because you're going to identify things that they may not even know is a deficit for them. Desires. So what is the family's ultimate goal for the child? We can put in plans and behavior plans, but if the family doesn't follow it, you're not going to see the progress. There's going to be no consistency. So we want to make sure that whatever goals, behavior plans we are putting in place, the families are able to follow. So like Anna said, they need to be simple enough for the families to be able to incorporate into their daily routine. What does the family want their child to be able to do? So those are great questions to kind of ask them. What would you like him to do? What are your specific concerns with play? How would you like him to play? Self-help, what types of skills would you like him to be able to do? That also gets their buy-in. If they really want their child to be able to pull their pants up, they're going to be there participating in session with you, working on those skills. Remember accounting for cultural differences. So there are cultures that will want their child to develop more academic skills. So academics are not something that we can program for or work on, but some families, that is their top priority, and they will try to that's kind of what they want to work on. But being aware of some of that and figuring out how can we help them. So if it's attending or transitioning from preferred to non-preferred. So we can work on things that will help in those skills. If that's their priority, we have to figure out how can we work around that. There are cultures that will want their child to develop all independent skills and won't be as concerned about academic abilities. Some cultures want the behaviors to decrease so that they're able to go out in the community. But then what does that mean? So asking them, what are they reinforcing? What types of systems do they have in place to be able to go out in the community, and modifying that for them so that it's appropriate.
Okay, so we're going to talk about goals now, prioritizing your goals. So a lot of the times, like Ronit was saying, parents don't even realize that their child is engaging in something that's completely inappropriate, or they don't realize that their child can't independently dress because they've always done it for them and they've never given those opportunities, right? So when you're thinking about these goals, you always want to prioritize, and starting with safety. So if parents say we have a really difficult time going out in the community because the child is eloping and he doesn't understand personal space, he's approaching strangers, that's where you would want to start, right? Especially if the family, one of their desires is to be able to go out to the community. You want to think about whether or not the behavior causes disruption in the home. Is it affecting the way the family is functioning on a day-to-day basis? Would the new skill increase interactions? Would the new skill increase access to the community? So you definitely want to think about all of these things when you're trying to figure out where to start with parent consultation. And then you also want to think about each skill area and the needs of the child in that area. So for example, with behaviors, if the child is engaging in really escalated tantrums, that's what you're going to target, because you definitely want to target behaviors first. Otherwise, all these other skills are going to be very difficult for the child to attain. And the parents aren't going to be as willing to work if every time they place a demand, the child's having a huge tantrum, right? So communication, manding. Is a child verbal? Are they nonverbal? Are they doing anything to communicate? And is that an area of concern? And if it's not, then that's where you jump in. Hey, I've noticed that Johnny doesn't communicate his needs and he kind of just makes sounds. And talk about generalization, because a lot of the times parents will say, oh, well, I already know he does that when he wants this, but nobody else is going to know that, right? So that's where you talk about those things and have them understand how important it is for him to generalize. Adaptive skills, dressing. Again, does the parent provide those opportunities for the child to develop the skill? Is it an area of concern? A lot of the times parents will just say, oh, I'll ask him, can he independently dress? Oh, I don't know. So those are things you want to make sure you know and bring to the attention of the family. And again, if the parents don't find the area of need important, they're not going to implement strategies. So if they aren't concerned about communication, that's where you say, it is important because of this and this and this. And then more likely they'll be a little more receptive and more open to implementing different strategies.
Coming up with a collaborative plan. So define the strategy, provide examples verbally of how the strategy can be implemented. Explain to them what it's going to look like, what you guys are going to do. Give them an idea of what is going to be implemented. Introduce the protocols. So walk the parent through the protocol, selecting a tangible routine, let's say meal time. Prompt parents to come up with ideas, provide ideas only as necessary. So really put it in their court, let them come up with, same like we were talking about creating some of the stimuli, make them really involved. If you guys are doing a task analysis, sit down with them, show them what that looks like, have them be a part of the process with you. Review the protocol with them, and then model the strategy. So get in there, role play it with them, show them kind of what it's going to look like so you can kind of work through some of those kinks and things that need to be modified before you're doing it with the child, and then provide them with feedback. Use natural routines or set up contrived routines to demonstrate the strategies. So if you're there, let mom know if we're working on mealtime, let's create a snack. Let's have them have a snack this afternoon so we can work on the meal stuff that we created. Talk them through the process as you're modeling it, and then debrief them, check in with them afterwards. See how they're feeling. How did you feel running this, going through it? Any questions, anything that you think we need to change or modify, or things are looking great, then let's continue. But really get a lot of their input into it as well.
So beginning to teach the family. So you want to check in, you want to clarify the strategy you want the parent to use, and you want to revisit the previous strategy discussed, right? So you're introducing something brand new. You want to tell them what the strategy is, you want to check for comprehension, give them scenarios, and see if they can even identify the strategy that you're using, and answer questions because they'll most likely have them. Make sure they definitely understand, and you want to constantly be giving them feedback. So if you're working on a parent learning how to effectively use priming, you want to give the parent an opportunity to actually implement the strategy during those opportunities, right? And if there was an opportunity that the parents could have primed the child and they didn't, that's when you would give feedback. Hey, you know, that would have been a really good idea. This is what you could have said. And you always want to use least to most prompting, obviously, with families as well. So you want to debrief after the session is over, engage them in discussion, talk to them about what they did correctly, what they could improve on, identify the needs, because you're not going to know what else to introduce unless you're directly observing the ways parents interact with their child, right? So if you're out in session and you realize, hey, they are priming, they are reinforcing, but they're not using pre-MAC and they're not using all these other strategies that are necessary for that client, that's where you would want to discuss that with the parents, and again, generate a plan to implement something that's easy for them to use, because like Ronit was saying, these parents they're tired. A lot of them work full time, then they come home and we're in their homes, and now we're putting them to work again. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to implement it effectively. And you want to track data. So you want to let them know what your focus is, and we're going to give you guys a little parent consultation cheat sheet after this section, and we'll go over that with you guys. Okay.
So once the strategy is implemented consistently and correctly monitor progress, begin working on generalizing it. So you want to make sure that the child can do it across both parents. If grandparents are involved in their daily life, see if they can generalize it with grandparents, aunts, uncles, things like that, and across settings. So yes, he can do it at home, but is he able to follow a mealtime routine using utensils both at home and at a restaurant or at grandma's house? So make sure that they really have those skills generalized across people and settings. This will also allow you to adjust strategies being implemented as needed. So you may go into the restaurant and realize that there's things that you may have not targeted at home. So then you can modify that goal on specific things for that. So that will give you a way to see that.
Okay, so we're going to hand these out, and we'll go through some parts of them. Okay, so this is just kind of tells you the basic things you should be doing when you've been assigned a PC case. So for those of you who already started, a lot of this you probably have already done, but there's some of us in here who haven't, right? So what should you do once you've been assigned a PC case? You contact the family and introduce yourself, and then you set up a meeting, a first meeting. A lot of the times when I've reached out to parents, they ask me, oh, does the client need to be here? I always say it's okay for the first session if the client is not there, because the first time you want to talk to the parents and interview again to get those strengths, needs, desires, and goals, right? But after that, the client should definitely be there because you need to track data. So you set up a first meeting, and then what do you do on your first meeting? So similar to your clients, you want to build rapport with the parents or the caregivers and explain to the family what PC is. A lot of these families are brand new to ABA. They have no idea what parent consultation is. They don't know what it means. So you want to define your role and let them know what they can expect from it. And this is where you talk about your expectations of their involvement for their child's progress. You go over their concerns, and then you ask questions. What are your biggest concerns? What are things that are most difficult? Outings, self-help skills, behaviors. If so, what do the behaviors look like? A lot of the times you'll ask parents, well, what kind of behaviors is he engaging in? And they'll say, well, he tantrums. But that can mean an array of things, right? What does it look like? Is he crying? Is he engaging in SIBs? Is he aggressive towards other people or property destruction? So you want to know exactly what the aggressive behavior looks like, what the tantrums look like. And you want to ask what the child's reinforced by, what do they love to do, play, eat. And then you go over PC goals. Depending on the FBA, some FBAs have 3 PC goals, some FBAs have 6 PC goals. So this is going to be overwhelming for parents. It's sometimes a good idea to let them know they have a certain amount of goals, but you're not going to go over all of them. So if you see the FBA has 6 parent goals and this family, you've learned from interviewing them, they're brand new to ABA, I would say, hey, there's 6 goals on here, but today we're only going to discuss one of them because that's the one we're going to be targeting for the next 3 months. And then once you've mastered that out, we'll introduce some of these other ones. Because if you sit there and read the goals, it's overwhelming, right? So again, I just put an example. You have a few goals, but today I'm only going to talk to you about the one that we'll be focusing on for the first few sessions. And let's just say that's identifying the functions, right? So you talk about that, and then you take notes. And a lot of the times, if the child is there the first session, I would say, I brought some toys, or what toys do you have here? Let's just play a game with them. And that's going to give you a lot of information about how the parent interacts with the child.
Oh, sorry. I was like, why is she what do I do in the second PC session and sessions to follow? So it's going to look similar to the first session. So now you've identified the goals, so that's what you're going to start working on, the functions of behavior in more detail. Then that's when you can kind of go into some of the research. That's when you can give them scenarios, explain to them what does it look like, and then since the child is there, start to kind of point out, oh, that was for attention. As he ran away, he looked right back at us. That was attention seeking. So starting to show them in their daily routines, what do some of these functions of behaviors look like. Then role play, so get in there with the parent, role play scenarios for them so that you can show them what each function does look like. Model the activities with the child and the family, we talked about that. And then have the family imitate that activity or similar. So you want to make sure that, you know, you're role playing just like you would do in a one-on-one session, but you're working with the child, you're role playing it out, you're modeling, you're providing feedback for them. And then once you feel like they're ready, let them now get in there and implement it themselves and provide them with feedback. What if parents are doing a good job and you don't know what else to do? Majority of the time, parents will come to you with new areas of concern and will seek new ideas and strategies to implement. Sometimes, too, even with between parents, because I've had some where mom will master out certain goals and dad's still not. And so sometimes even just the two, you're working on functions of behavior with dad, you're working on something different with mom. So there's always going to be things to do. And then as our kids grow and develop, new things come into play. Now they're in school and now there's new behaviors going on, or now they've seen this and so now we're working on a new tantrum that we haven't seen before. So there's always going to be things to work on, or they're ready to sit and use utensils and do a mealtime or self-help stuff. They're going through potty training or getting dressed. So identifying those things that come up. So there's always something to do.
Yes, there is always something to do.
So yes.
And then remember to always track data on your parents. So we're going to talk about this in more detail, but I'm just going to go over this really quickly because we have some examples for you guys. So you want to write out the goals on a data sheet like so. So just the data sheets that we already have for parent education, if you guys haven't seen them, they're in the binder. And you write out the goals exactly like you would do for your one-on-one, and you If you're working on priming, you write that in, right? If you're working on functions behavior, you write that in. So during activity, you track whether or not the parent is priming, and it's the same exact way you would track data for your client, but you're tracking it on the parent. And then you want to keep a monthly summary sheet as well. A lot of the times, the parent education, you just track it on the data sheet, but at the end of the reporting period, or when it comes to the reporting period, the supervisor still needs to have that data. And a lot of the times, the supervisor will reach out to the parent consultant with that section, hey, fill in your data and send it back to me. So you're not going to be able to fill that in if you're not tracking data and if you're not keeping track of it on a monthly summary sheet. So that's why we always say you have to track data all the time. So a lot of cases only have 4 hours a month of PC. A lot of them only have 2 hours a month. Some have more. But for those ones that have limited time, you definitely want to track data both of those times that you're out there. Because otherwise, if you're out there once and they did 100% and then you go out there 2 weeks later and they got 0, that's not truly reflective of what the parent can do, right? And like Ronit was saying, if you're working with 2 parents, maybe one parent really is at 100%, and then the next time you come out, the other parent is at 0. When you report that, it's not going to be very consistent, right?
Questions about the data taking stuff?
So it's this form and then the monthly summary sheet.
Correct, yes.
I didn't know you had to do that. I haven't done it.
Yeah, it's more really to help you too, because like Anna was saying, like come 6-month reporting period, I reach out to my PCs and say, hey, I need data for this progress report and it's due. And so if you have to go back into the home and look through every one of your notes, it's going to take you a long time. So if you have the summary sheet, you can just send that to me and I can, or you can really quickly write, 30% here, 50% here, but it's accurate data that we need to go off of. Yeah.
And then the report, it's BCBA, right? That's the person that will be doing the report.
That's the person that does it, but they will reach out to you guys for the data. Yeah.
A lot of my cases, I've had to make PC calls. I'm working on yours because there wasn't any data taken. So I've had a few new cases where, let's see, just a recent one, they started in December and there hasn't been any data at all. And I just started the case. I was like, oh, good.
So then when we have to go back and report.
What do I do with that?
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do I report that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So you always want to make sure you're tracking data. And sometimes things happen and you're going to go out to session and parents are having a bad day. And against parents, they like to talk to us, right? So sometimes that happens but you still need to track notes. So you need to write, I wasn't able to track, or PC wasn't able to track goals due to, and then you list your reasons, because that way, if the supervisor goes back and there's nothing for the month of February because his family only has PC once a month, you can say, oh, but this is what happened that day when I went out. And then we have something to justify the reason why there's no data.
And if you're noticing that you're not able to take data on a consistent basis for whatever reason, let your supervisor know. If parents are sitting there and just having these conversations and you're not able to track any goals, talk to the supervisor so they can have that conversation with the parent. Say, they're here to work on these goals. They have to take data, so let them know.
And then also canceling, like if parents are constantly canceling PC, let your supervisor that way. You can report in the progress report. Parents have been canceling, so that's the reason why we need to collect data.
Yeah.
Communication with your supervisors is crucial, because that's a great point, because I don't a lot of times hear from cancellations from my PCs. My one-on-ones a little bit more because they know that I'm going to be coming out, but I typically won't be at the PC sessions, and so when it gets canceled, they reschedule them. But it's important for us to know if I get a text every other week that it's canceled, that's something that I also would need to tell the insurance company that they're not participating in PC or they're consistently canceling. So just communicate with your supervisors as much as possible.
And then I had a question for supervision in PC. Is it specific per case where supervisors are allowed to drop in on PC, or how does that work?
They can.
So do we need to get approval for that?
I don't believe so. I think that you can overlap supervision and PC.
Okay.
Yes.
And then also just reminding your parents that the ultimate goal is that they will be able to independently manage behaviors and teach the child new skills when we fade out. So if they're not participating and they're not learning these skills that you're there to teach them, they're not going to be able to do that. And that's going to reflect in their child's progress because there isn't going to be consistent follow through. So just reminding them of that all the time too, if you're facing resisting parents or parents who are constantly canceling. Okay, so now we have an activity for you guys. So these are some goals that sometimes you'll see on FBAs, and there's a ton of others that we didn't add into the PowerPoint because there's just so many. But a lot of the times it's difficult for PCs to understand what the goal is even asking them to track. So we wanted to just go through these with you guys, and reading the goals, we want to see what you would track. So what would you write on your data sheet if you read the first goal? Parents will identify the 4 functions of behavior and be able to recognize and respond appropriately with 80% fidelity of implementation across 2 consecutive weeks. So if you were to see that on an FBA and you say, yes, this family is brand new to ABA, they don't understand the functions of behavior, which would be a good idea for them to know. In order for them to know how to respond appropriately. So yes, I'm going to implement this goal with my family. What would you write on your data sheet? So what are you tracking? Yeah, so how would you write that on your data sheet, and how would you track it?
Well, I don't know if I've been doing it right, but I would just put functions of behavior, and then the trials is a P if I prompt, or circle if they got it right.
Okay, so for example, if you have a child, you're out doing PC, and you're working on brushing teeth, and during brushing teeth, the child is stemming off the water or has a tantrum, those are 2 separate behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. So if he's stemming on the water and the parents ignore, and then he has a tantrum because he wants to escape brushing teeth, at the end of that, you would go back. And how would you track that data, though? How would you know if the parents identified the function correctly?
So would it be better to isolate each function in your data sheet?
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
Because like that one, there's 2 different functions.
Yeah,
Right.
those two.
But if you're just saying, yes, they ignored it correct, but it wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
They ignored one, not the other, so it's technically 50%.
So it will be
Yeah.
like seat across.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of 4
Yeah.
functions.
So you would want to track them, and it's good for reports too, because that way you can write specifically, yes, 100% of the time, 80% of the time, parents know when their child is engaging in a behavior to escape. But what about if they're not sure if they're engaging in something for attention and they're constantly giving that child attention? That entire time they're reinforcing the child. So you want to know what functions they can identify and if they're responding appropriately to each one separately, right? Because again, on your data, if that day the child only engaged in tantrums and it was for escape, and the parents responded appropriately for all 3 tantrums, so it's 100%, right? But then the next time you come out, he's engaging in attention-seeking behaviors and automatic, and the parent has a 66%. It's like, oh, I thought they were at 100 for the month of February. Why was there such a decline for March? So it's a good idea to track them separately.
Parents will learn a variety of proactive strategies to increase the likelihood of positive behaviors with 80% fidelity of implementation across 2 consecutive weeks. What would you be tracking?
So I would also break that down to just strictly doing like priming. Just for, do you want to do like multiple ones, or do you want to just stick to one in one session?
And I would also say talk to the supervisor
Mm-hmm.
about that, because some supervisors with some families will say stick to one. This family's kind of having a more difficult time with PC or with data taking, where other families will say you can target 3. This family's moving through their targets. They're doing really well. They're
So
picking
you just
things
kind of
up.
like have to feel it out depending on the family.
Yeah,
Okay.
and also where you're starting. Like priming might be a great one for one family, where for another family it might be something different.
Yeah.
And then also for the proactive strategies, there are some proactive strategies that are just not appropriate for the family.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of the times where I've seen FBAs and it says use of the timer, but in all reality, it's not necessary for this family. So you can just write that. It's not appropriate. The child maybe doesn't even need a timer. So a lot of those things, again, talk to your supervisor and let them know, hey, this is what's been going on. I don't think it's appropriate to use or teach that strategy. It's not necessary, so that they know. Parents will follow through with the demands once it has been placed on the client in 80% of opportunities across 1 month. What are you tracking? The third one.
Compliance.
Not necessarily compliance. So you're strictly tracking whether or not the parent followed through on a demand. So for example, let's say you're doing an activity like dressing. Okay, you're working on dressing, and the parent says, put your shoes on, and the child engages in a tantrum. And the parent sits there and waits it out and has the kid put their shoes on, that would be a correct, right? They followed through. If they say, put your shoes on, and the kid engages in a tantrum or any other behavior, and the parent waits for a minute or 2 minutes and then can't handle the crying, okay, fine, do you need help? I'll help you. They put the shoes on, it would be an X. They didn't follow through with the demand.
The compliance would be your one-on-one goal. Child complies with 80% of opportunities. Parent places demand. Did the child comply or not? But you're taking data on the parent,
not on the
child.
child complying.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Parents will facilitate a full ABA session with 100% independence. What are you tracking?
It's just running the session.
Them running
Like,
session.
helping them.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, and this is a more advanced goal. So this is for families who have had ABA for a while, and it's getting close to fading out, right? So I've been on a case, and this was the goal for the parent, because we had faded out of direct one-on-one, and it was just the PC model, and the parents had full knowledge of all of these strategies. They've been with us for a while. And so a lot of the times I would go out, and it was more just, I was just tracking data on Mom the entire time, and she was tracking data on a few goals for the child. And she would place all demands, she would create the visual schedule with him, she would implement the reinforcement, she would implement the breaks, everything. And she was able to do it, and then eventually we faded out, right? So basically, this is just, I would track data on how much prompting she needed. So a lot of the times she would get stuck, like, what do I do? What do I do next? So if I had to give her a prompt, then I would track that as a prompt. And that session wasn't 100% independent because she still needed some of my help. But then eventually it got to the point where I was out there tracking data on her, and she was 100% independent.
That's the goal.
And that's the ultimate goal, right? So
That's what we want.
So a lot of the times you'll see, if you do see this goal, it'll say parents will facilitate half of a session, a quarter of a session, and then eventually it'll be 100% when it's
Or
closer
the
to.
percentages are lower. They'll facilitate
Right.
with this amount, 30%, 50%.
Yeah. Parents will direct the client's maladaptive behaviors in 80% of opportunities across 1 month. What are you tracking?
Redirection. Successful redirection.
Successful redirection, right? So a lot of the times when the client is engaging in a behavior, parents, they just want it to stop. They want the crying to stop. They want the aggression to stop. They want whatever it is that they're engaging in, right? So a lot of the times they do redirect them, but they're not redirecting them in an appropriate way or to something that's more functional. A lot of the times their redirection comes off as reinforcement, and they think they're redirecting and they're really not. So yeah, and they'll say, but they stopped. They stopped, but it's not redirection, it's reinforcement. And so this is one that you definitely want to model. And so a lot of the times, that's why I said it's a good idea to go out and observe that one-on-one session. So a lot of the times, if I'm going out for the very first time to a PC session, I'll ask parents if I can come out while the one-on-one is there, and then I'll basically narrate all of the one-on-one session while the parent watches. So that was redirection, that was reinforcement, that was this, so that they are more aware of what these strategies look like, right? And then just make sure you highlight on the ones that you're focusing on.
Parents will learn a variety of reactive strategies to decrease maladaptive behaviors with 80% fidelity of implementation across 2 consecutive weeks. What are you tracking?
Anything that happens after the behavior. But
How they respond.
Same like the proactive, again. Break it up,
Break it up,
make
yeah.
sure that you're using the most appropriate to that family.
So we kind of already went over this, and it's on the PC cheat sheet, but this is basically what it would look like. You write your goal, and then the number of trials and the function of behavior. So also remember that in order for data to be valid and reliable, there should be a minimum of 5 trials. Again, that's not always possible, but this is because if you write priming, it happened once and it was 100%, that doesn't really tell me that the mom is at 100%. That just says, oh, she did it once, so that she did it. But that doesn't mean
You're
she's
only there
gonna,
twice a month.
right.
You're not getting a lot.
So you want to try to create as many opportunities to track these things more than one time.
And it's the same like X for wrong and then circle for right.
Mm-hmm. And then the PC data sheets have a section of notes off to the side. Could you let me borrow your sheet, your PC data sheet, so I can go? So it has the goal and then the trials and the notes, right? So a lot of the times when I'm doing PC is I'll write the goal, track the data, and if, let's just say, priming occurred only once and there was only one opportunity, I'll write specifically what activity that was during. And then the next time I come out, it was 50%. I write the activities there so that when I go back and I write it in the report, when I send it back to the supervisor, it all makes sense. We want to be as detailed as possible.
You can even in the notes write if it was role played with the parents, was it with the child. So that just gives you more information. If you've only been role playing up until now, put that in the report. We'll let them know this is the data they're doing 60% role play with the PC consultant. So,
and then in the notes, you always want to track during PC. A lot of parents will they'll tell you what their concerns are. So always write that in because the supervisors do go back and read the PC session notes, and that because a lot of the times there isn't that consistent communication, but at least there is that. You should be reaching out anyway. But that way if the supervisor sees something that, oh, I didn't know about this, they can call you, hey, I saw this in your notes, what's been going on?
But especially if new behaviors come up or parents really concerned about something, let your supervisor know. New medications, a parent might say, oh, we just started a new medication. That's something important for the supervisor to know because that may skew the one-on-one data too. Or there's going to be some things that we might have to modify. But if we don't know that, we might not be out there for another 2 weeks. 2 weeks is going to make a big difference. So a quick text, email, phone call, just want to let you know, just saw this family. These were some of the concerns. This is what's going on. Just keeps everybody in the loop.
Okay, so now we have a scenario and then we have some practice questions. Jamie is a 3-year-old girl who lives with her mother and older brother. Parents recently separated and the father is currently living outside of the home. Her mother and father are currently working on a co-parenting plan. However, at this point, her mother is the only one who will be participating in Jamie's services. Jamie is able to mimic some sounds, however, generally grunts, screams, and points to things that she needs. Her mother is concerned that Jamie's tantrums could be related to her lack of communication. Jamie's mother is extremely involved in Jamie's treatment and is eager to learn ABA strategies. She does well with priming Jamie of what will be happening throughout the day. So we'll do groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could do 2 groups, 5 and 5. Yeah, we'll just do 2 groups. I guess we'll just split it down the middle. That'll be easier. Okay, so these are the practice questions. What parent goals would be appropriate for this case? Write 1 parent goal. What challenges might you face on this case, and how could you resolve that challenge? What could you do? What would be the first thing you would focus on with the family, and why? Have a follow-through goal. So, for example, Jamie grunts when she wants something, right? So you would want to make sure that parents are following through with creating that opportunity for communication. So if Jamie is grunting, mom's goal is to not give Jamie what she's grunting for unless she uses some form of functional communication, whether that be PECs or vocalizations or ASL. And what challenges might you face on this case, and how could you resolve that?
The lack of the proper knowledge of the functions of behavior, and maybe even some of the things would be related to not knowing the function of tantrums.
Okay.
Yeah, so tantrum being a big issue, and then her thinking that tantrums for this reason, but it can be for different reasons, so then kind of backtracking.
So you could even have a different goal for that, right?
Yeah, right.
Functions of behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what did you guys come up with? What challenges might you face?
We put the other parent isn't involved, so we don't know what's happening when she's with the parent.
Right.
what he's reinforcing, so she can fall back on progress.
And then what could you do to resolve it? What would be your steps?
Talk to mom, see how much he's willing to cooperate first. And some dads do, some dads don't. We just gotta talk to the parents. Try to see if you can meet with him, and if he's really not wanting to get involved, then just come up with a plan with mom.
And then you would also want to reach out to the supervisor and let them know, hey, the time is divided between mom and dad. The child is spending majority of the time with mom. These behaviors are happening here. When the child is with mom, behaviors are escalated or there are no behaviors. So then talking to your supervisor definitely first, and having them set up a meeting or some kind of communication with the other parent to see what we can do to kind of bring them on board. Because as PCs, again, you always want to remember there's boundaries, and the supervisor has the ultimate decision. So if you are facing a situation like this, you don't want to suggest anything, you don't want to give your opinion about anything, you want to go back to the supervisor and say, hey, this is what's going on, I need your support, what can we do?
Yes.
And what would be the first that you would focus on with the family, and why?
I just wrote down that communication, finding out their needs.
Yes.
And figuring out ways for the child to communicate more, so teaching them on different strategies on how to use her reinforcers to get the child.
Yes. And what about you guys? Same? Okay. Okay, so lastly, we're going to go over resources. So a lot of the times, the Latino families that you guys will be working with.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Oh, I know. Don't worry. The PowerPoint's going to be up on.
We have a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
for
on
training
YouTube.
on shift planning.
And it'll be on
So
there.
it's all recorded, and then
I can give you guys a
Okay.
with the links.
and other trainings too. So if you guys want to see other trainings that you haven't seen, you can go on there and watch those too.
Oh.
Yeah. And then there's going to be a binder with the PowerPoints in the binder, so you guys can always come back to that and make. Yeah. So you have resources to get resources. So for the first one, it's the Orange County Resource Referral List for Spanish Language Services. So what I was going to say is a lot of the families that you work with don't know what to do, or they're facing a difficult situation and don't know how to get the help that they need. So this happens a lot with Latino families, and a lot of the times it's just the lack of knowledge, and they don't really know how to self-advocate a lot of the times, right? So this resource and referral list is really, really good. And it has all kinds of different things. It has things on housing, family violence services, financial assistance, food assistance, and it goes through all kinds of different things. So if you have families that are having a difficult time with housing, or paying their rent, or trying to get additional services for their child, this would be really good to go back to. And it's in English, so if your family is Spanish speaking, don't give this to them because they're still going to be unaware and they're not going to know. But you can definitely go and translate for them and interpret this for them and get them connected to those resources that they might need.
Are we allowed to fill out any sort of paperwork for them? Like I have one case, they wanted to send their daughter to the autism research neurology place in Irvine, and the application was in English. And he said, I don't know how to fill this out. Can you just help me fill this out?
I would typically say no, just because if you fill something out, that's
You're liable.
you're liable for that.
I've done it in the past where I've translated to the family what they're asking
Right.
and had them fill in. And I'm sure places like that too, you can even help the parent find the phone number and they can call and ask for a different form, or I'm sure they have in different languages. So you can help them in that aspect of, let's look it up, let me give you the number, or help them make the call so they can get the paperwork that they need, but not actually filling it out for them. Because then also, how much of it, we don't know how much of it you're filling out and how much they're filling out. You could write verbatim, but they're not there. So I've done it where I'd go question by question with families and just explain to them, give them examples of what that means, and then they'll say, oh, I understand, and then they'll fill it in.
Yeah. So it just, translating that document would be better. Because again, you don't want to be liable for anything. And let's just say you check off a box that, like, whoops, and then it comes back to you, right? So you don't want that to happen.
I have a client, the mom's concerned about the school. So she asked me what kind of school I recommend or anything near their area. So how do we go about that? Because I know we don't really focus on education.
Yeah. So again, it's again those not giving your opinion, right? So she's asking for your opinion, but you can nicely just say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not really allowed to discuss that with you. I can talk to my supervisor and they can address that with you, and go back to your supervisor so that then they can go back to the family and let them know. Because again, it's all liability. If you say something, recommend a school, and the family goes there and something happens, and oh well,
You told me to go there.
yeah, she told me to go there and she said it was really good. So you don't ever want to be stuck in a situation like that.
Right.
And another question, are we allowed to go to IEP meetings if the supervisor's Spanish speaking?
Typically, no, it's always the supervisor that goes. There have been some cases where I've been to a few IEPs because the supervisor doesn't speak Spanish and the mom wants somebody who does, and then the office will request that I go, but the supervisor still goes. Because they always have interpreters at IEPs, or they should have interpreters, so the family still is aware of what's being said, but sometimes they just need kind of that extra support from somebody who does speak their language. But the supervisor typically will always be there, and if the supervisor isn't there and can't be there, then usually that would have to be something that is approved beforehand. Yeah, but PCs usually are not the ones to go to IEPs. And then the next resource is food pantries in Orange County. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Earlier at the beginning you said that we were allowed to go to schools, so that's just to work with the client to go to school?
No, so I'm saying there's situations where the school is having a difficult time with the client, right? Because they don't understand the behaviors and they don't know what to do. So sometimes the family will say, I will allow you to do PC hours at the school to help the teacher manage behaviors. So you're going and providing that parent consultation, I guess. It's teacher consultation in that case, for that teacher.
Oh.
But you're not going to the IEP meetings.
Sometimes also like without OT, PT, or speech, I've had some families who've reached out, and they'll still reach out to the supervisor and say, hey, can you come out? But if I'm maybe not able to, or if it needs to happen right away, I'll ask my PC, hey, can you go out? And the family is requesting that we provide the outside services with some support, and then you would be able to go to like an OT session and give them some strategies that we're using at home. And it's the same thing. This is what we're doing at home with the child. And it's a different environment, but we can always let them know what's working for us at home.
Yeah. So just making sure it's okay with the supervisor first. And the food pantries in Orange County. So when you click on this link, it'll open up a new page, and it's a map, and it has a bunch of little baskets, like shopping baskets. And these are places that give foods, toiletries out for free to low-income families. So if you ever are working with a family that's having a really difficult time, you can always give them this information, and then they can go there and get food, toiletries, anything that they need. Okay. Prevention and intervention resources. This has brochures and downloads. Again, all of this stuff is available to them, and their focus is Latino families, low-income Latino families, but all the documents are still in English, right? So if you print something out, you're still going to have to translate or interpret for the family. But again, like Ronit said, these places, because their focus is Latino families, they do have Spanish-speaking people available. So the family can always call and get a hold of somebody that is going to speak Spanish.
There's something that I mentioned to Heather, I think it was a month ago. She said if you ever have to translate anything from the parent manual, that can be deducted from your PC hours. That's what Heather told me. So if you're at home and you want to translate like a couple pages or something, it makes it easier for you.
That's what I started doing with this.
Yeah.
I started translating in Spanish.
Yeah. She said it's built. That's what she told me, that it's automatically billable.
Yeah. So again, just making sure that you do say that, because if you are clocking that into your shift planning, you would have to write that in the notes and then state who approved it. So even if you are going to do it, she said yes to you, but if anybody else is doing that, make sure you contact her first, and she says yes, Heather, and make sure.
If you need to translate anything, the bind, the book.
I didn't get that far.
Wait, so if you have to translate the PC book, then what?
Like a couple pages or something before you go into your session at home, you know, and print it out for them.
Yes.
Then first ask Heather who can do
Already
that.
translated.
And if Heather says, yeah,
On that blank page.
So if
you
you
show that blank page.
type something up as well, that can be
Yeah.
Oh, you're working, oh yeah, so that's right.
Crazy,
I
we
actually
get it
worked hard
next month.
the other day and I asked her if
Finish.
I had it
Okay.
looked out, but
And
because
Do you
Spanish
just
is
We're
like-
working on it.
And then on
Yeah.
on
Because
Saturday, I use this hour to learn Spanish.
Well, all you do is just go to Google and it's Google Translate.
Wait, no, there's a website I have to send you guys. It's from Spain. It has all the every single term translated into Spanish. Every single ABA term.
Really?
Yeah, it's
I have it on my phone.
Yeah,
I'll give it to you guys.
The thing is
So it
that
has every
it's
single
only
term
ones in
translated.
terms of citation rather
No, it's a
than
website I
terminology
found.
to
It
make it
bookmarked
easier
it
for
in there.
families.
Yeah, so again, if you are doing any kind of translating, make sure that it's pre-approved so that you guys can
Okay,
vote.
so this is the link, ABA e-learning, and it has if you print it out, it has every single term translated.
And then also, I don't know if you guys have come across this, the ones that already have been doing PC. A lot of terms in Spanish, even if it is directly translated to an appropriate word in Spanish from ABA, a lot of parents have no idea what you're talking about. It's Chinese to them, right? So, exactly. So those cultural considerations. So I have families that are Latinos, but then they're not all Mexican, right? And so you have to change the words that you use with them because they mean completely different things in completely different cultures, even though it's all Spanish. So a lot of the times if you are translating things directly, it's still not going to make sense to parents. So make sure that you're using layman's terms when you're talking to them, because otherwise they're going to lose you. And a lot of the times it can come off as condescending if you're talking to them at a level that's just, it's not appropriate, right? So I use a lot of examples when I'm talking to my parents in Spanish, and having that cultural awareness is going to help out a lot, because you can use examples that are appropriate for that culture. So there's some things that I would tell families that are Mexican that I would never tell a family that's Argentinian, because it's just not culturally appropriate. So just having that cultural awareness is going to help you a lot.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Well, okay, I'm going to give you guys an example. Okay, so of how it's completely different in both families speak Spanish, completely different cultures, right? So when I went to this home, I said to the mom, and I'm saying Spanish, you guys all understand Spanish, right? I'm going to say, cuando usted le pida al niño que coja el
Oh,
zapato.
that's funny. You can't say that.
Right. Okay. So for me, that word is completely appropriate. Coge means to pick up.
Yeah.
This mom lost it. And she thought it was really disrespectful, but again, this was the very first time I was out to meet this family, so I wasn't aware of the cultural difference that there was. Immediately after, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I can't say that word around her, right? And I apologized, and I said, I'm so sorry, I used that word appropriately, and for me it's appropriate, but here it's not, and that's okay. I never again use that word, because you guys all know what that word means in other cultures, right? And it means completely different. It's like completely different. And right. So things like that. After that, I learned, okay, I have to be really careful, and I have to, and I don't, a lot of the times parents they'll ask, because if you have an accent, oh, where are you from? And that's okay, if they say that. Sometimes that's good to know. Like, oh, I'm Mexican, I'm Argentinian, I'm Spanish, whatever it is. Because those things will save you from making a fool out of yourself. Sometimes. And a lot of other words, like for pen, bolígrafo, a lot of parents say pluma or other words. I say bolígrafo, and they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So again, it's just the words that I use on a day-to-day basis with my family are completely different from other families. So you learn as you go around these different homes what words in Spanish that family is going to understand, and now I know, okay, I don't say bolígrafo with that family, I say pluma, right? I don't say coger, I say pick up. So, yeah, again, just always consider those cultural, and you know what? this is just out of your free time. But a lot of the times, if I'm working with a family and I've never worked with anybody from that culture, I do research. So I started working with a family that was Peruvian. I'd never worked with a family that was Peruvian. Okay, so you do cultural research that you know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what does that culture focus on, and that's going to help you out a lot. And that's just kind of out of your own time that you're going to do those things, but it's going to make you a better clinician, right?